Good afternoon. I'm Charles Edwards, Interim News Director for WABE 90.1. We'd like to welcome our viewers to the Atlanta Press Club Loudermilk Young debate series originating from the Public Broadcasting Atlanta studios. Now, this is the runoff debate between the Republican candidates for Georgia's State Senate District 9 in Gwinnett County. Now, let's meet the candidates, and they are in alphabetical order. Mike Beaudreau is a former Gwinnett County Commissioner, and PK Martin is a former Lawrenceville City Councilman. PK declined to participate in today's debate, so he's represented by an empty chair. Well, now let's meet our panelists. First, we have Pete Combs. He is an award-winning reporter for WSB Radio 750. We also have Janelle Davis. She's a reporter for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. And Jonathan Shapiro, who covers state and local government for WABE 90.1. Now, today's program will consist of 3 segments. For more information on the rules for each round, please visit the Atlanta Press Club's website, atlantapressclub.org. Now, let's get started. We'll begin with the program with our panel asking Mike Beaudreau a couple of questions. Mike will have 60 seconds to answer each question, and Janelle Davis will ask the first question.
Hello, Mike. How are you?
Good afternoon. I'm well, thank you.
Good. We'll start off with a question about transportation, if that's okay.
Sure.
Clayton County just took a major step in joining MARTA. Gwinnett operates its own bus system separate from MARTA. Do you think Gwinnett should consider joining MARTA? What are your thoughts about metro counties in general coming under one umbrella system that operates throughout the region?
I think when you look at transportation, we have to look at holistic solutions, and those include all types of transportation options. If you look at my track record on the Gwinnett County Commission for 8 years, I held the line on spending when it came to transportation because no matter how you slice it, you've got to be able to have a transportation network that takes care of citizens not only inside your county but also outside of your county. And to your point, Madam Panelist, a lot of what we're looking at today is making sure that Metro Atlanta has transportation options that are in fact reachable and accessible and available to all its citizens.
And now Jonathan Shapiro will ask the next question.
You've been endorsed by Georgia Right to Life. Earlier this year, the National Right to Life organization broke off its affiliation with Georgia Right to Life for refusing to support federal abortion legislation that included exceptions for rape and incest. Where do you stand on exceptions for rape and incest, and what do you make of the decision by the national organization to break off ties with Georgia Right to Life?
I think that was a decision that obviously the national affiliate felt like it had to make with its local affiliate here, and so it's really hard for me to comment on their particular relationship. I think what's important to know about the issue of abortion is that I support Georgia Right to Life's position, which is that simply we have got to make sure that we make the protection of our unborn children an absolute priority in the upcoming legislative session, I should say. And so to do that, you need a strong principled leader. I have the experience to make difficult decisions, particularly when I'm under the gun, particularly with time deadlines, and particularly with conflicting folks around us with different views, of course. It's important to have a senator that can go down from day one and be ready to lead on issues like pro-life, which is so important to many of our constituents in District 9.
And that concludes our first part of the program. And in the second round, each candidate asks a question to their opponent. And since PK Martin did not join us today, Mike Beaudreau will ask a question to his absent opponent, and we'll have 30 seconds for rebuttal to what he feels Mr. Martin would have responded.
I would have liked to have obviously had my opponent here so I could have asked this question to him, so I regret that he couldn't be here today. I think that's a decision that frankly flies in the face of being open to constituents and open to questions. If he was here, I would ask the following question. I would simply state, Mr. Martin, on your campaign literature throughout this campaign, we see over and over again where you want to be a senator that wants to hold taxes low and you portray yourself as a constant conservative. How then can you explain that in 2 successive years on the City Council, you raised taxes nearly 5%?
And now, if you like, you have 30 seconds to give a rebuttal to what you think Mr. Martin would have said.
It's hard for me to determine, of course, what Mr. Martin would say since he's not here. I think perhaps he would have said something to the effect of, perhaps I needed more time to research those decisions. Perhaps they came on me in a hurry, and so I didn't have the time to fully research them and fully vet them. But if I had to do things differently, perhaps I'd do them differently, but that's the way I voted.
All right, now for those just joining us, this is the runoff debate between the Republican candidates in the State Senate District 9. P.K. Martin declined to participate in today's debate, so he is represented by an empty seat. And now we'll go back to the program for the final part. In this round, each panelist will ask a question to Mr. Boudreau until we run out of time. And Pete Combs, you get the first question.
Thanks, Charles. Mr. Boudreau, you were the subject of an ethics complaint within the past couple of years, complaints that targeted your expense claims for items that included a Christmas party, Gwinnett Braves games, and undocumented lunches. During your 2 terms as a county commissioner, you racked up $22,797.25 in expenses. The total of the 8 other commissioners combined during that time was $15,936.32. What is the status of that investigation, and what guarantees might you offer to voters about your spending? Specifically, will it be any less prolific as a state senator?
Thank you for asking that question. If you look at my expenses over the course of 8 years, we're looking at roughly 50% of the expense allowance that I actually spent. It's important to note that by far I had the largest district in Gwinnett County. We had an extremely busy calendar with many different events to go to. I do not agree with the assertion that somehow going to a company Christmas party that invites us as commissioners to be at is not somehow a county function. I think what's important, however, is the ability to actually go out and actually meet constituents and stay in front of them. For 96 straight months, one Saturday every month, I held to my promise of having a town hall meeting.
And Janelle Davis with the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, it's now your turn to ask a question.
Thank you. The previous senator who held the seat that you're vying for was targeted by the Tea Party in the run-up to the primary election. How closely are you aligned to the Tea Party values, and how willing are you to be aligned to the Tea Party if you are successful in this position?
Well, there's very many different Tea Parties, as the audience I'm sure is aware. I was endorsed by both the Gwinnett Tea Party and the Atlanta Tea Party Patriots, the 2 such largest organizations in Gwinnett County, and they endorsed my candidacy because they feel like we need a senator that can go down to Atlanta and lead from day one. They don't want to send somebody down there that's going to need training wheels, that's going to need time to learn everything. I go down there with eyes wide open. Serving 8 years on the county commission, when some of the difficult times that I did, proved my mettle, proved that in fact I can handle a tough call when it comes my way. I don't shrink from decisions. Instead, we rise to those occasions. And so it's important to know that I appreciate the Tea Party's support in this campaign, and I'm going to continue to fight for the values that we share.
And the next question comes from WABE's Jonathan Shapiro.
The state's new gun law has made it possible for school districts to arm school personnel. Do you think Gwinnett should train and arm its school administrators or teachers moving forward? More broadly, what do you see as the most effective way to cut down on school shootings and violence?
I think, first of all, it's a local school board decision. I'm running for state senator, not to become a state senator that's constantly meddling in the Gwinnett County school system and their local decisions. I'm a firm proponent of Second Amendment rights. That's why Georgia Carey recently endorsed me here in Gwinnett County and in this particular district, because they believe that I'll be the most effective voice for, in fact, promoting the ability for folks to protect themselves, as they should be able to do via our Constitution.
The next question comes from WSB Radio's Pete Combs.
Thanks. Mr. Boudreau, Georgia seems to be in the midst of what one political analyst called an anti-incumbent fever. Indeed, we've seen a lot of incumbents, including in your race, fall out of the polls. And I wonder, you were once a Gwinnett County Commissioner during what many consider to have been very trying times. What qualities do you offer voters of the 9th District who are looking for a fresh perspective?
Well, very good question. In this particular race, I've faced this question at many doors as I've knocked on doors throughout the district, and continue to be a proponent of term limits. I believe you should serve 8 years in government and then take a break. As someone that served 8 years on the county commission, I can tell you that, in fact, it helps to take some time out of politics. I believe that in passing term limits and giving the voters a chance to actually decide it as well, I think would help clean up not only our local system, as well as on a federal basis as well.
The next question comes from Janelle Davis of the AJC.
The state passed a bill this year that allows drug testing for welfare and food stamp recipients. State officials have delayed, though, the implementation of the law out of concerns for potential lawsuits and constitutional concerns. What do you think of the bill, and is this something that you're willing to pursue despite the concerns about the lawsuits?
I think many times when good legislation is passed, folks file lawsuits. That's not unusual at all. I think it's advisable that the government on the state level is being cautious with implementing this, but I would support the legislation. I think it makes sense that folks that are on public benefits should in fact be on public benefits and deserve those benefits.
Our next question comes from WABE's Jonathan Shapiro.
The governor has proposed an overhaul of the State Ethics Commission. What do you see as the biggest problem at the Ethics Commission right now, and what would be the specific fix you would push during next legislative session?
I think first of all, they need appropriate funding. They have many enforcement mechanisms over there at the Ethics Commission that are not even able to be used because of lack of staff and lack of ability to get the job done. But furthermore, I think specifically what we can do is take out control from the state budget with their budget. I think there's an inherent conflict there that arises when folks that are making these decisions about people's ethics and their potential violations are being funded by the very folks they're supposed to be investigating.
WSB Radio's Pete Combs will ask the next question.
Thanks. Mr. Boudreau, you mentioned a moment ago your support for term limits, and I wonder if here and now you might be willing to announce your own plans in terms of limiting your term in Congress, at the state Senate. Would you put a limit on that?
Absolutely, sir. I've already committed to voters that I'll serve a maximum of 8 years. And the issue, though, goes further than just me. I think it's important in today's political environment where we see time and time again folks that are in office for long periods of times being too attached to that seat, thinking that they're somehow owed that seat. And so I want to see legislation passed, and I'll push for it. I will lead on this, as I've done in the past, to pass legislation so folks only can serve 8 years in both the House and the Senate.
The next question comes from Janelle Davis of the Atlanta Journal-Constitution.
Several states have taken steps to legalize or decriminalize marijuana. Earlier this year, a bill here in the state involving medical marijuana failed. It would have legalized an oil-based extract of marijuana to treat seizure disorders. Do you support this legislation? And also, what do you make of states like Colorado who have legalized the recreational use of marijuana?
I would have supported the very narrow use of cannabis oil, which is wholly different than medical marijuana. I know it's been reported quite a bit that way, but they're actually two different issues entirely. I know I would not support what they've done in Colorado. I don't believe that that's in fact advisable. As involved as I am with young people today, I know in fact that substance abuse continues to be a major challenge. And in fact, I don't believe in loosening those laws. I believe in fact in toughening them on the folks that are propagating the crime and getting treatment for those that truly need it.
And I think we have time for one more question from WABE's Jonathan Shapiro.
Some states this year, including Georgia, considered a series of religious freedom bills that some say would have allowed businesses to deny service to gay customers on religious grounds. For example, should a baker be allowed not to bake a cake for a gay marriage if they say it's against their religion? Why or why not?
I think that bill was vastly misunderstood. As I understood it, it's going to, in fact, protect companies and private folks from doing things that are against their beliefs. I think it's important that we note that the founders of our country, that religious liberties and religious freedom was one of the most important topics and most important issues in the founding of our country. And so while it's difficult to comment exactly on that legislation because it's now been passed after this, the session's passed now, I think it's important that we look at that issue on a holistic basis going forward.
All right, that is all the time we have for questions. Mike Boudreau will now have 60 seconds for a closing statement.
I want to thank, first of all, the Atlanta Press Club for inviting me out here today, and the moderator did an outstanding job of moderating between myself and my opponent who decided not to show up today. I think it's important that as we look forward in this race, that we look at a leader that can go down to the Capitol and lead from day one, has the experience of results that were actually proven and actually accomplished. A conservative leader, and one that is not going to back down from my principles, but at the same time understanding that as we go down to Atlanta, we have many projects to work on. I'm going to continue to be a champion for term limits, for tax reform, for education reform, being that my mother's an educator, my wife's a teacher, and I'm active in the education world. I feel like I'm a good leader that you can send down there to the Capitol to fight for you on many of these topics. I respectfully and appreciate your consideration for your vote on July 22nd, and thank you for your time today.
All right, and that concludes our program. And we'd like to remind voters that the runoff elections will be held on July 22nd. Our thanks to Mike Pedro and to our panel of journalists. We'd also like to thank the Atlanta Press Club for arranging today's debate. Now, for more information on these debates and about the Atlanta Press Club and all of the runoff debates they will host, you may visit atlantapressclub.org. I'm Charles Edwards. Thank you for joining us for the Atlanta Press Club Loudermilk Young Debate Series.